Twice impeached, twice acquitted, still never been exonerated.
Good morning, Trumptopia. A special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Hosted by the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Let's talk Trump.
Hello and namaste, dear interwebulary femmes of audience ship. Today is Sunday, February 14th. It's 9:07 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And yes, you are correct. This show is not on any kind of recognizable schedule. No tengo horario para nada, mi amigo. And that's the way I like it. No, I probably can, could, should, would institute some sort of regularly scheduled programming on the weekly so that fans have got something to cling to. Then again, there's plenty of stuff on the archives there. If you wanted to listen to one episode of my weird show a day, every day at some preferred, idealized time that fits into your schedule, you can just pretend that it's on live right when you're listening to it. And there's enough stuff. Even if I'm talking about old-timey, ye olde ancient things from way back in the days of yore, when Trump was only just beginning to destroy America. From within. Ugh. Wow. Here we are, friends. And before we kick everything off, today is indeed Impeachment 2.0 spectacular. Given that I don't generally do much for the dreaded V-Day, and no, I don't mean the movie, I mean the consumerized day of buying things for your supposed beloved one. For some weird, quirky curiosity, I have lived a cursed life. While I've had an interesting and diverse and wide-ranging dating experience, if I can say that, like if that's a valid thing to say. I've dated all kinds of people, all kinds of women. I shouldn't be too vague in my descriptors, or people will assume and project things. I've dated all kinds, and I'm not judging anything, right, or judging anybody. I've dated all types of ladies, and at all times of year. But curiously, hardly, almost never, I can't quite say never because it's not true, 100%, there is at least one and or two, at the most three instances, 3 different years in my life when, and maybe only one, and I don't know, but when I was in a relationship or an attempt at a relationship, right on or any time during the lead up to Valentine's Day. And it's not only just the once? No, of course not. I'm a liar. It has to be at least the 2 times. So maybe 3 times. But out of almost 2,420 years, that's not a lot of Valentine's Day planning and or executing of plans, because most of the times I've been curiously single. So there you go. And here I am today. But nobody's fault other than pandemic lockdown. So I am not one to be too gratuitously into celebrating this this holiday. Mostly because as an outsider, as someone that was never like married, right? And some may judge that very harshly. Some may think that's really cool that I never got married. Came close. I mean, technically speaking, not really that close. It's not like there was scheduled arrangements that got ruined. Let's put it that way. I never got that close. So no, don't want to over pedal the story. But yeah, that's it. Valentine's Day has always seemed to me, even from when I was young, like young enough to not be interested in relationships, even if I might have, pursued some childish version of them, some youthful iteration. Valentine's Day always seemed like the pinnacle of look, here's how corporations ruin the world. No offense to anybody who loves Valentine's Day the way some people love Halloween, because some people do. Some people have decorations out. And I don't know if that's because they're always in love, or because they're in love with love, or because they're desperate and alone and they hope that through the miracle of some ritualized behavior on this holiday, love will find them. I don't know. I have my own confused, tortured, and probably not very accurate ideas about love, romance, and relationships. Although I try to be, a gentleman and the best human being that I can. Don't get me wrong. But one can easily assess my life and say I've been out of love more than I've been in love. Oof. But I'm not going for the emotional, the woe is me. I'm not trying to play that card. I'm just trying to get off the subject. Valentine's Day, it is what it is. Bless your hearts if you're having a wonderful, sexy, adorable, cuddly Valentine's Day with people that you boink, or that you're deeply, madly, committedly in love with, whichever the case may be. My beef with it is not the love part, right? Love, I'm all for it. Even if I'm not in a relationship, I think people should share and indulge in the cultivation, if we can use that kind of language on this show, indulging in the cultivation of love in the abstract. I don't want to use the term absolute, but in the broadest sense of what that might mean to cultivate love. For example, I think, if I'm not mistaken, unless I imagined it, my Facebook profile picture should be, right now, for today, celebrating the delightful day of honoring Saint Valentine. Who, what did he do? He freed the Irish of all the snakes? I don't know. It's one of those stories that never made any sense growing up, and I'm like, wait, what? Also, potato famine? So are they hungry because there's not enough potatoes, or because potatoes are not food? Which is it? And either way, why do we eat so much potato nowadays? We're overcompensating for that potato famine, aren't we? And of course, I'm just being ridiculous. Valentine's Day, whatever its historic roots may or may not have been, and I've heard all kinds of adorable stories. Someone, and this is a vague recollection to me, so I keep most of my anecdotes here anonymized, right? Not because I'm some blind member of one of the various Anon groups. I'm not. I don't disrespect any of that. I just don't, I have my own take on that. Let's not go down that rabbit hole right this hot second. But I keep my anecdotal storytelling anonymous. I don't see a need to invoke identities. I myself am a fictional cartoon character. So what do you want? And you know, just for the sake of people's privacy and safety, this world is a wacky world with a lot of people on the internet who think that they are entitled to be bullies, right? So I was going to make a quote. Someone recently said, "What?" My brain just dumped that out and said, "You're not going to tell the story? Okay, fine. I'll stop holding this." And I'm like, no, I was building up to it. Someone said something to me that was, oh, yes, quite clever. I need to think about that. And I forgot about it. And I mulled it over. And then I don't remember what it was. The thing right before that, unless I'm mistaken, my profile picture on my social media should be make like a Valentine's Day image, a heart that I drew. I'm usually really like, oh, I don't know how to draw basic shapes. And then I was like dicking around with this one app and I drew this awesome kind of, it's got attitude, but it's like an adorable, perfectly shaped heart. It's got a little ruggedness to it. It's a manly, like, you could see that as a tattoo on a dude. And it would be like, nice. And I don't know what it is. It's got angularness to it to sort of give it a sort of slightly masculine vibe, I guess. And I'm not, saying that that's better or anything. The part I'm taking pride in is I drew that by hand on a digital thing. And then, I made all of that. I didn't steal that image. I didn't borrow that from some image place. I drew it. And then I made all the effecty bits too. And it's cool. And then it says what's the wording? The heart, you've seen it in other memes I've made, the one where it's like, haters, we outnumber you. It's that heart. Not like anyone knows what I'm talking about. But the new one that I have up now says normalize platonic, universal, unconditional love. Or unconditional, universal love. Whichever way is the more slender inverted pyramid so that it fits in the heart thing. But yeah, and it's got a cool font that I like. So it's like, yay, fun. Fun with graphic design. So happy Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day can be about platonic love. There are 7 different kinds of love? That's the thing I forgot to look up. Damn it. I was going to be like, opening bit, prattle on for a hot minute about the 7 kinds of love. Because it's Valentine's Day. The hyper-commercialized day where we supposedly honor and celebrate love, but really we just stress out about whether or not we're getting any nookie and then whether or not we owe anybody chocolate. And the rest of it is like, meh, the rest of the world that doesn't care about those particular metrics, it's just another day that's like, oh, cool, there's candy and people buy crap. Lots of pink crap today. Woo! I'm not jaded and bitter. I'm just, it's part of my, if each of us do indeed, by birthright, have a calling in this world, right? And this world doesn't have to be just this particular planetoid that you're on, but the collective shared phenomena of being personhood in the material, right? That's the world. There's many, many planetoidal wombs in this world. And there's many dimensions of different universes in this world. But if there's one thing that we can be said about people in this world is that they have weird ways of coping with love and dealing with it. And I didn't want to make this a Valentine's Day special, so we're going to stop talking about Valentine's Day. Boom. Enough of that. Just share some love, folks. And know that there's 7 different kinds of love. And somebody from ye olde ancient philosophical times wrote a really lovely book about it, so you should go read that book and educate yourself if you didn't know. One of them is agape, which is the kind of love that I think we have too little of in this world, which is the unconditional, platonic, it's just like love of being. Like, I love all people simply because they are people. And the world could use a big, thick dose of that up in its face right now. But instead, here's some electronic genre music. Dreams within dreams. DJ Zed. A cosmic pulse, pack, groove, pad, audio entertainment. That DJ Zed sure knows how to digitally orchestrate loopified loopy things for your ear hole, doesn't he? Yes, he does. Give it up, DJ Zed. So, first, a point of order. A thing I think is bizarre, and you don't have to agree with me, and I don't mean anybody on either side of the wedge issue any offense. But what the fuck is it with the language of sanctity that get used so much around the Constitution? I got asked, and I've talked about this on the show before, but I've been asked more than once in my life, do you even believe in the Constitution, bro? And I'm like, is it a document that requires my belief? Like, I gotta believe in it the way people believe in the Bible? I don't think it's supposed to work like that. And I get it. I'm not an idiot, right? Like, I understand the way in which we say, oh, believe in yourself, believe in each other, believe in the government. Do you believe in the Constitution? Take a deep breath with me here. Of course, I had to almost hack a lung out. I didn't make you listen to it. Because I don't know about you, but I was breathing in cannabis. Woo! What the fuck was I talking about just then? Oh, belief. And does the document... Here's what I think about... And I don't mean to freak people out. Because I get the sort of quiet use of belief. The little tiny... Like, believe in... Do you believe? Can you believe Bill wore a red sweater? I'm like, yeah, of course I can believe Bill. I mean, does it require me to believe in that? Like, no, it shouldn't. Does the Constitution require belief? I don't think it ought to. It doesn't seem to in its language. It doesn't address belief. It does talk about some things like pursuing happiness, which may or may not be actual things in reality. And if they're not actual things in reality, then they are beliefs, right? Okay, but that's the thing. One of the problems with language is that we've got too few words for some really important stuff. But then again, you get too technical with the words and people lose interest. So there's that, right? Like, why do we talk about these organized... Excuse me, hold on a second. 1 minute. There we go. I had to even that out. Why do we talk about these important, I grant you, very important documents, like as if, likened to or in the same way that we talk about religious dogma? I don't want to have to believe in the Constitution, because they'll put some crazy shit in the Constitution, but then if I don't believe in it, I'm a bad person. I think the Constitution shouldn't be about belief. The Constitution should be about the agreed upon, consensus-built principles of organization around which we build our system of laws for are we or are we not, if nothing else, a nation of laws that are flawed and must constantly be amended, right? Am I crazy? Is that a ridiculous way of describing this delightful country of ours? I don't think so. In fact, I think it might very well be an appropriate and accurate way of describing this country of ours if we truly want it to be great and aren't privately shorthanding great for some predefined quality that must be either inherently expressed by one or, adhered to. Because that ain't greatness, right? Great is everyone, and I mean everyone, lives in abundance and in security and in freedom. The trifecta. Why we trade things in or out. But anyways, we were going to talk about the impeachment. Woohoo! Impeachment trial number 2. First off, let's give him a golf clap round of applause. For, if nothing else, he has indeed achieved a singular hugeness, a big league historicalness of being the first and only president in American history to have been impeached twice. Ironically, I think some of his QAnon supporters in government may try to rush to make Joe Biden the second president that's impeached twice. Put them right back to back in a row. Even though that's counterintuitive, because why would you do that? I mean, I get why you would want to attack your opponent with an impeachment. And I get why it's vilified. Their argument only makes sense if you idolize the guy. If you don't idolize the guy, their entire argument falls apart. And that's the pinnacle of the problem. That's exactly what's always been the problem with those who have attached themselves to Donald Trump. Whether it was the early adopters / supporters / sycophants who wanted to be part of the early team in its various mutations, or the people who actually became the initial administration, or any of the people who tried to come in through what was probably some expected to be a revolving door of administration in and outs. But let's talk about the actual situation with this second impeachment and the delightful thing that they curiously have called a trial, which, for the record, has officially, overtly, and not in any sort of secret way, but in a right-in-your-face kind of way, always has never been a trial. Not in any meaningful sense of the word. Because a real trial in a real courtroom under real courtroom protocols would have been radically different than what we just sat through for the last week. Let's first clarify that. Okay? And that's not a criticism of either team. That's just a pointing out of the fact of the matter with impeachments and the weirdness that they think they're a weird political thing. Which is intended, indeed, if I may be so bold, to be exactly what it is, a weird political machination to bring about the attention of the nation and, some effort to exercise checks and balances control over the executive branch vis-a-vis the legislative. So, my very, very first splash impression of everything that I had to write down was when the prosecution, which was generally, let me say this, with hindsight on the full course of events, not just at any of these first notes from early moments, the House managers, aka the prosecution, truly represented everything that is aspirational, above board America. Even though it may have bent some corners or cut some corners and bent some rules, it represents itself as the aspirational, we are the white hats because we try to do things above board, and sure, we make mistakes, and sure, we stumble and fall, but we're fighting the good fight. And we're defending the nation and the greatest good. And in playing that role, everybody on that team spoke eloquently, with passion, and with dexterity, right? They nimbly handled their end of the debate. Meanwhile, generally speaking as a whole, Trump team was a mess a hot mess, ranging all the way from ironically super passionately well-spoken members of the team, and ironic because they are, of everyone involved, the one member of the team that has previously personally sued Donald Trump, going in the opposite direction, like not defending him, right? Suing Donald Trump for the big lie. What happened? I don't know. Is there already some reporting out there about what people think might have happened? Possibly. Do we know for a fact what actually happened? Unlikely. But somehow, for some reason, this lawyer who, Van Diemer, one of those fascinating Van to something names, which I actually am kind of a fan of, actually. Just in terms of funny names that sound interesting. This guy went from suing the president and trying to denounce his lies about the election to defending him at his second impeachment, which was about inciting an insurrection, also, which was, anchored and or kind of the whole causing of it was centered around the same sets of big lies about this election. Now, we are at quite a loggerheads, culturally speaking, because those that will fall away from Trump are falling away and going, oh my goodness, what was wrong with me? He is a psychopath, a pathological liar, a two-faced, beguiling seducer and charmer, but also sort of like a crackpot and a lunatic. Like, why did I idolize this crazy orange spray-tanned man? But conversely, as those who are destined to fall away, those who are destined to cling towards the bitter end until they really hit rock bottom are clinging ever harder now, which I'm deeply concerned about. So that might have something to do with something. But this guy, the other two lawyers that spoke, and forgive me, I'm terrible at names, right? And because I'm not a journalist, I don't care. I'm just here to talk about the big picture ideas. So suffice it to say, as far as I'm concerned, the level of the level of granularity that's available to my memory and appropriate enough is Team Trump legal defense team and Team House managers, okay? And you'll forgive me for not having their names. If I was staffed up and had assistants, of course I'd be boom with the names ready to go and know how to pronounce everything. So here we are. What a fascinatingly bizarre impeachment week. What have we seen? What have we learned? What have we gotten? What did we get out of that? The thing I hope and pray that we really have gotten out of it culturally, as a nation and as a world, as a planet, as a collective, whatever metric you want to wrap around that collectively more and more people have had their aha moment and gone, nope, yeah, he's full of shit. He's a lying, conniving, manipulative, and not very good at it con artist. And not a patriot in any way, shape, or form. Not a saint sent here to deliver us from sin. He's not a golden Buddha child sent here to activate enlightenment. He is not a warrior for Jesus sent here to slay the blood-drinking Satan worshipers. He's just Donald Trump. And while I know that to a lot of people that's just obvious, right? And and that those are the people that the Trump supporters call the Trump haters and accuse of being delusional, because that's what you do when you're cultifying someone and not owning up to cultifying them. When you're idolizing someone unworthy of being idolized, you blame everybody else's refusal to idolize them on derangement and anger. But deep down, there's a reason why Trump was able to step into the spotlight and carry that many people into this weird, fevered dream of an orange and red America. And that's because Trump just stepped into a void that needed filling. And that some of these politicians are banking their future career that he will continue to have influence and power is the lamentable, like, oh, what a surprise. I really thought that this final several weeks was going to be like, everybody get off the Trump train. I guess not yet. They're not quite there yet, folks. I'll tell you what, though, before we get any further, and I know I'm being vague, and this is not a moment by moment discourse. If you want me to do that, I might. I wasn't interested in trying to do a real time commentary as I watched the show. But if I may be so bold to share with you one of the more important things that I did write down as I watched the show, the impeachment show, is this. I think that this one fact exposes Trump for precisely what he actually is. And what is that? He demands direct, personal, one-way loyalty. The most loyal person to Donald Trump was Vice President Mike Pence. Trump literally threw him under the bus, as it were, threw him to his own mob and did nothing. Kicked back and did nothing. And watched on the TV as his own people in mob form threatened to take Mike Pence's life. That's what loyalty to Donald Trump gets you. Right? So, honestly, how can anybody continue to idolize that man? So the prosecution, the House managers were, generally speaking, in my opinion, they did a solid job. They were generally decent. Trump's team was wackadoodle everywhere. And in whatever moments that could be called their best moments, the most conflict of interest guy was peddling the most hyperbolic defenses of Trump and was being the most Trumptopian. I would like to point out that I don't think that the House managers did an amazing job. That would be a stretch of the imagination. And I'm not a blind faith blue team faithist, right? Like, I don't just uncritically support the Democrats here, folks. I'm not capable of that. So you'll forgive me. There's not a lot that I could really complain or bitch and moan about in what they did. But it should be pointed out that in a really tragically sort of like, this is typically them kind of way, the Democrats literally handed the GOP all of the ammo that they could have dreamt of to use against them. And I just have like the shrug emoji, facepalm emoji combo platter for them. And I can talk about that in depth in a minute, but the fix was in from the beginning. Let's just own up to that. Nobody, even though I tried for a hopeful, like, wouldn't it be brilliant if there was a magical surprise 19 or 20 Republicans that were just like, yeah, screw this guy. This is it. This is beyond the pale. This must be held accountable. But there weren't. Would have been nice though. Would have been super cool to get that kind of like extra. Where's the thing? That extra bit of boost of people right out of nowhere. But unfortunately, it didn't quite work out that way. But the defense team did a couple of things that were really interesting. One, they were really curiously disorganized and like stubbornly anchored in whataboutism. So they had their very lawyerly general sort of misdirection, general vagueness, and avoiding to directly address the transgression. They didn't argue the facts of the case. They argued everything but. And even when they did sort of make the motions and make the noises of sounding like they were going to really address the facts of the matter, they were just kind of chucking it, all off to the side as their bias would have them do. I'm looking through this note because I got really long-winded here, and then I realized I don't even want to talk about this stuff anymore. I pointed this out before, and I think it's really worth pointing out again. Although they use the word trial over and over and over again, it is not as many people might think. The language defining Congress having sole purview over the procedure is surprisingly sparse. The arguments about the Chief Justice needing to be there or not needing to be there, those you could just go around in a circle around that forever. And I think it's one of those mistakes. They should have had him do it anyways. Right? The Democrats did multiple things that did not help. They themselves were slow. Pelosi sat on it during her phase of the process. Although it's very fair and valid to criticize McConnell for the ridiculousness of his final speech, because he's the one who made it ultimately impossible for the trial to fit in before Trump left office. We coulda, shoulda, woulda gotten this all knocked out and removed Trump as silly as it may sound, we could have removed Trump from office even 3 or 4 days early, which sounds pointless, but the point is he got removed, right? And then there wouldn't have been all of this jurisdiction argumentation, which is what made it way too easy for the GOP to be a profile in spinelessness and idolatry. So one of my favorite moments of ridiculous irony. So one of the backing up a second, there were 3 lawyers on Team Trump. One, to me, just sounded like a living human cartoon character, sort of like a person embodiment of Foghorn Leghorn, who's just a simple country lawyer. And I say, he was just weird, and he spoke oddly, and he just didn't sound very, very competent of the facts and of the details and of the procedures. And he seemed like the kind of lawyer, like, we're just going to put you up to fill time. I don't understand when people do that and why there are lawyers like that. But he, at some point later on, that was my impressions of him right away, right? Later on, he admonished or warned the GOP not to do what the Democrats are doing now, because if they convicted, it would be a terrible precedent set. But oh, the irony, the GOP had already started off on that nonsense. They had, what's her name, bring articles of impeachment in the House a week ago or 2 weeks ago, whatever it is. So we'll see how that pans out. And if we ever even hear of her articles of impeachment ever again. Because the thing about Congress is you can say all kinds of stuff, but until it gets voted on the floor, it doesn't mean anything, right? That's the fight, I guess, because they're always fighting. There was so much stuff that could have been said about this impeachment process, but I think one of the places where it just critically failed for me was at this juncture where they were going to decide about witnesses. And as has been pointed out, each time they do an impeachment, that particular Congress, because it's a different Congress every time they get elected in and out, right? That particular Congress chooses procedural rules and schedules the proceedings of the impeachment trial. And the whole attack from the Trump defense lawyers is nonsensical, because they weren't preventing witnesses and stuff. They were just saying, we'll decide about it here at this phase. Ultimately, though, everyone decided not to do it. Whosever fault it was, because we can get into a silly, pointing of fingers merry-go-round. Whosever fault it was that they didn't choose to bring about witnesses and stuff. Shame on them, because they coulda, shoulda, woulda. And they should have taken, I think one idea was being floated, but I wrote this down before I heard it. I swear. I'm not just regurgitating stuff they talked about. But as the sort of problematic moment was on the horizon, and they first said, oh, they've got to decide about witnesses, I said, listen, to myself out loud, and I wrote it down. They should do everything right or correctly. They should adjourn the impeachment trial for at least 2 or 3 weeks, but stay in session and focus on COVID-19 stuff, because everyone's really interested in that. even Trump supporters are like, hey, we could use a little money here. So we could have, should have, would have done that. And then alleviated the genuine critiques that were like, gifts given to them by House management. No, that's not, I don't think that's a correct way of saying them. But the House managers, i.e. the Democrats, didn't do a lot of they did not do a big giant investigation into the process because they were doing the feigning and dashing to give the appearance of wanting to work in a timely fashion. But lo and behold, they didn't make a big stink about it at the time, but they almost seemed to just go hand in hand with McConnell to delay things on both ends and both chambers just enough so that there could be this critical flaw. The other way in which the Democrats totally handed the whole thing in terms of, he can get acquitted, no problem, was that they wrote one effing article. And I totally understand there was a discussion early on about not writing too many articles because that'll make the trial too convoluted. And there was some backlash to how complex some of the stuff was with the last impeachment. In both impeachments, I am of the humble opinion that they picked some of the worst flawed language possible for their articles of impeachment in both cases. And then in both cases, because they made such choices, it was beyond easy for the Republicans to just all rally around voting to acquit and make fancy schmancy sounding arguments about it. Ultimately, though, these trials are at the pleasure of Congress. All they ultimately have to do is vote, and vote with the weird 67 majority threshold, right? And that's it. That's what makes the trial. You say at the trial, you accuse this person of stuff, you vote on whether or not you think they should be censured removed from office and barred, and then you decide if you're going to vote the second vote to bar them from future office. And to the best of my understanding, that is the bare bones necessity. Everything else, all this highfalutin talk of honoring it's just lip service. It's just gaslighting because there's no requirement. And while, yes, there are some norms that are generally sort of agreed upon, but they all, they clearly use because not that I've seen that many. It's not like we've had dozens of impeachment trials, but of the impeachment trials I have observed, which is now 3, the same sort of inevitability was painfully obviously there. And that as many dismiss impeachment process as a bit of a circus show, it is, as has been pointed out and should be remembered at all times, by nature, by form, by function, a political beast. And it's meant for, more than anything else, the court of public opinion. That's where we get, to things actually mattering. And in that regard, I hope, and like the most important thing as far as I'm concerned about this past week, is that I hope plenty of people watched and were decisively impacted so that the needle moves and Trump's popularity noticeably begins to drop, if not straight up plummet. Although, that's a lot to ask for. Trump does have this whole, like, down-home, redneck, but rich car salesman charisma working in his favor. The silver lining, dear friends and listeners, the reason why you're excited, having listened to all of this, and here we are, having gotten this point, the end of the show, is that, and I bring this up in a sort of passing, just to put a button on it at the very end, because it's worth reminding everybody else out there who's conveniently forgotten. Trump faces multiple criminal and civil investigations that are ongoing, and some new ones that have just kicked off. And arguably, there will be, as more evidence surfaces, as more understanding is brought to light, as more light is brought to bear, and more is understood about the crazy things he did while he's in office, he will, as his own legal team pointed out, be at great legal exposure, legal risk of being held criminally liable for his behavior. And like I said, with all of this, to some people that's an obvious, yeah, duh. But for a lot of people, it's something that they've just blinded about, and that is worth talking about openly and sharing and reminding others. Like, all of that is great, but don't be patting yourselves on the back. Don't be congratulating yourselves for January 6th. That's the thing. It's fascinating about January 6th, right? And I know it's been talked about before, but it's worth really bringing to mind and thinking about and contemplating deeply. January 6th simultaneously is something that the Trump base takes pride in, pats themselves on the back for participating in, while simultaneously is dismissed and framed as debunked. Like, they're trying to distance themselves from it. And they're trying to lay the burden of responsibility on others, their opposition. They simultaneously want to take credit for it. They want to, brag about being ready to do it again. And then they also simultaneously want to distance themselves and accuse Antifa and others for having supposedly be the ones responsible for it, and claim that they would never, ever have done that in the first place. It's cuckoo, crazy, nut jobs. But as they work through that cognitive dissonance associated with that, and more people from that crowd face justice and go to jail, and don't miraculously have their legal fees paid for by Donald Trump, and don't miraculously win their cases against, the evil deep state. And as hopefully these other, and I know that for most people, there's this Trump exhaustion. There's no Trump delirium, but there is definitely now, I don't think. Maybe there was in the media. I don't know. I think most people were just standing up to someone that should never have been tolerated and should never have been allowed to wreak havoc in the seats of supposed power. The pendulum will only sort of dangle for so long, though, and then it will proceed to move in the other direction. And as the pendulum is larger and crazy, like the scale of the pendulum that I'm discussing is much bigger than, one that might sit on your desk. The momentum and the actual, the movement on the pendulum may appear different than one might anticipate. But brace yourselves. It's a coming. And just like, hopefully, Trump will begin to deal with these multiple civil and criminal investigations into his actions, we will also turn our attention to the blue tyranny and hold them accountable and ensure that they don't become that which their opposition has accused them of being, right? Because if that goes down, then everything's just a crazy clusterfuck shit show of nonsense. Wouldn't you agree? Dear friends, as this impeachment phase comes to an end, let us remain critical and dispassionate and calm and rational, and let us hold our representatives and our legal institutions to some account. Because, bottom line, this guy did things beyond the pale that no politician should be allowed to just do and get away with. And while he has an avid and passionate fan base, that fan base must also come to terms with the level of duplicity and manipulation and dishonesty they've been dealt in exchange for their loyalty to him. Because there has to be reminded, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but we need to drill this idea into each other's heads and into our own. Patriotism does not mean personal, direct, and sociopathic loyalty to any one politician. Patriotism means caring for the nation as a whole, and that includes all of the people. Because what is this nation? It is made up of we, the people. Even those of us who are not necessarily 100% full-fledged citizens, because we're still here and we still functionally take part in the nation. And I'm a very inclusive person. Like, I have my papers, right? But I am that controversial. We the people includes refugees and quote-unquote illegal immigrants. Because nobody is illegal when borders are made up and most countries are established on stolen land. Not to get too radical in my statements. Those are, that's not a matter of belief, right? That's an assessment of circumstances, as far as I'm concerned. And we need to bring that to our critique and assessment of Donald Trump. And because I think it's important. We should not lose momentum, right? The political willpower should not waffle here just because he got acquitted. As I pointed out in one fun, visually sports ball themed thing I posted recently, if you look at just the score, it was 57-43, if I remember correctly. The vote tally. If this had been a regular jury trial and they had come to that vote tally, or if this had been sports ball, Trump would not have been acquitted and he would not have won. He would have lost. He has to be held accountable, and this figment of their collective imagination, this delusional idolatry of Trump as somehow above the law, must be gently shattered. And I say gently because they are our fellow compatriots. They are our fellow human beings. They are our fellow members of this community. Even if they, from their perspective, are bound up in a bunch of ideological constructs that would rather kick the rest of us out of this country, they are not in control, not 100% yet, right? And this is still supposedly a free republic democracy. And we have to brace ourselves to build a better mousetrap, to fix the system from within as we build that better mousetrap, to heal the participants in the system as we do those two other things, and hold both parties equally accountable. Because no politician from either party, or is it neither party? No politician from neither party? No politician from either party should be idolized. I'll say it again. No politician, regardless of which party they come from, should be idolized. They should be supported, yes. They should be our representatives, yes. They should be empowered to take decisive action on our behalf, sure. Idolized? Absolutely fucking no way. No, thank you. That is incorrect. So we got to pivot, and as we push the holding Trump accountable through its fullness, and we make sure we don't lose any momentum on that. We also have to make sure, it's a reminder to myself too, because I've been sort of like still in sort of, I'm not at 100%, right? Like I'm not vigilantly criticizing everything Biden does. In part because I didn't want to jump on the Biden criticism bandwagon 6 days in, whatever it is now. It is now 14. No, because when did they actually? Yeah, it's a little bit more than 14. And some of the criticism that has been thrown at Biden is heavy-handed and a little exaggerated. Some of it is appropriate and apropos. And we will definitely have to talk about that in depth. But that will have to be at a future date and time, dear friends. I really kind of blurred through most of the notes I took. But I realized, in the big picture, it's fascinating and interesting that we even went through this. It was bizarre listening to Van der Veem talk about the Democrats forging evidence when he himself had just, weeks ago, less than months ago, sued Trump over his own fake evidence about election fraud. There's something... the defense kept trying to make this equivalency. The Democrats talk about fighting all the time. Sure, great. And as I've discussed in my own podcast and prior episodes, it is weird and bizarre and remarkable that politics is all about fighting. And we all should be like, what the WTF? And also, maybe that's how they corral us and shepherd us towards generating conflict on the streets. And, woe is me. Didn't we just see a bunch of conflict on the streets? Americans hating their fellow Americans over how to be Americans? So, it was my favorite, wow moment was when Van der Veem, in a huff, panting, he was a little out of breath, urged the left to recognize their own hypocrisy. Really, sir? Really? They let him get away with not testifying, and they acquitted on him. So he will forever have the stain of double impeachment and the awkwardness of, okay, sure, you were acquitted, but both times the evidence pointed in criminal directions. This now, let's say the next 9 months, because the long arm of the law does indeed move a little slowly for my taste sometimes. Although sometimes they just knock some shit out right quick and it's like, wow, the whiplash. Holy shit. We'll have to wait and see, as Trump loves to say. I hate when I say things that Trump says. But we'll have to wait and see. But theoretically, folks, that's where we're heading, is all of those prosecutors bringing those multiple investigations into active, what do we call those? When you get the thing, but you know what I'm looking, but word isn't found, but indictments, there you go, boom. Open or sealed or otherwise, Trump is facing a shitstorm of indictments in the coming months. And hopefully, knock on some wood, he doesn't make a liar out of all of us who have thought for quite some time that they will ultimately bag him and put him in some comfortable, whatever you call those, luxury prison camps. I'm not making predictions. I would be just as nonplussed and unsurprised if Trump just disappears off the stage and the news media, frenzy of covering anything Trump just falls right off a cliff. And 3 years go by, and next thing we know, we haven't heard from him again. And the really big question is, will he turn up? Will one of the kids turn up in the presidential election 2024, right? Let's keep our fingers crossed to no. None of that sneaky disappearing, going off the radar, and coming back in the future with a bigger base. We need to focus our attention on consciously voting for and bringing about the manifestation of Trump being held accountable for all the things he can truly and rightly be held accountable for. Or I'm not the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Having said that, friends, I shall leave you to it for this Sunday. May you have a pleasant and delightful day. Don't forget to take some time to meditate and connect with your own private divinity, because it is deep down inside of you that thing we call God is busy being the entire universe. And it's confusing as all hell, so you got to spend some time getting to wrap your brain around it. Until next time, stay safe, stay sane, stay spiritual.
And that is the latest madness from behind the orange wall. Thank you for listening to GMT, a special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Stay woke, Trumptopia. Stay woke.
That's sarcasm if you haven't figured that out yet. The stay woke bit.